In this video, I'm going over the most common game-breaking mistakes in AVP2 multiplayer maps. I hope this video helps any of you mappers out there in avoiding these unfun scenarios in your maps. Number 10. Missing Predator Vision Modes. This is a common mistake made by new mappers. The Predator's vision modes need to be properly set up in each map. In Dedit, they're called starlight views. For starters, the standard starlight views found in the sample maps from the AVP2 tools should be used. That way, the vision modes for not only the predators, but also the alien and the marine all look and feel the exact same way as the rest of the game. Without setting up the starlight views, the Predator's vision modes don't look right at all, and the Marine's night vision doesn't work. This looks really bad on really dark maps, and on those maps, Predators may have a really hard time moving around. Number 9. Unbalanced spawn points. Firstly, don't ever leave one functioning spawn point. I've seen this happen on maps created both by new mappers and community legends. When there is only one working spawn point, the map is broken in multiplayer. If players even bother to stick around and play it, it will turn into a spawn killing fest in no time. It isn't fun. The spawn points have a heavy influence on where the players go and where they fight. With only a single spawn point or a single spawn area, the players mostly only stick to that one area. They will completely ignore any other part of the map, and with only a single spawn area, it will be pretty difficult for a player to even escape that fray. Even when server-side mods solve the spawn killer problem, it sucks the fun out of the match when the players know exactly where the other players are all the time, which in this case would be the one and only single spawn area in the map. Many maps were cut from many map packs, including the Ultimate Map Pack, over this issue. Having experienced it myself, it makes the map extremely unplayable. You can imagine how big of an issue this is when one of the very first problems solved by AVP2 server-side mods was adding protection for recently spawned players. There are a few exceptions to this rule. For instance, if you made a cooperative or skirmish mode map where the players must work together. You may think this is an easy problem to avoid, yet there is one gotcha that has ruined some really good maps. This catch is the fact that you must keep your player spawn points and your exosuit spawn points completely separate. Exosuit spawn points will disallow players from spawning at them, even if you've explicitly allowed players to use the game start point as a spawn in Dedit. In other words, an exosuit game start point may only be used by exosuits, no matter what else you've allowed to use the game start point for spawning. This same rule applies to queen spawn points. Queen spawn points seem to have been some kind of gameplay feature that was scrapped in AVP2 development. However, you can still use Dedit to set up a game start point to allow alien queens. I believe it was intended to have players respawn at these game start points when they've morphed into queens, or possibly the player could have played as an alien queen in some planned game mode that we've never seen before and was scrapped in development. Number 8. A solid hull shell around the entire map that players may reach. A common map building technique seen in a lot of multiplayer maps includes enclosing the entire map within an invisible outer shell. This technique helps prevent the level packer from possibly tearing up the geometry of the map or removing walls, floors, or ceilings that the player may actually see. Often it is used as a last resort to fix a map leak, which is a common issue that you can run into when building maps for AVP2. The downside is that there is no optimized visibility tree for the map. In other words, the whole map is drawn all the time, even rooms that the player cannot see. Another downside can appear when players may actually reach this invisible hull either through glitches, map holes, or sometimes the players just straight fall through the map. This especially happens during map loads. When players make it onto this safe haven, they get a nice wall hack. Marine and Predator players may shoot down enemies inside the map. Aliens may pounce on unsuspecting victims. To quote Private Hudson, they're coming out of the goddamn walls. And sometimes it's not so fun hanging out on the void. The player may become trapped there unless they respawn. This problem can be resolved by either switching the build method so that the map is using a fully optimized viz tree instead of with a detail 0 shell surrounding the entire map, or by making the void area around that outer shell uninhabitable for players. So if you're going to use the detail 0 hull shell method, make it non-solid or kill the players some way, or possibly teleport them back into the map somewhere. Number 7. Single-player stuff in a multiplayer map. In general, single-player specific stuff does not work in multiplayer. It just doesn't function really well, if at all. I'm talking about things like NPCs, exit level switches, exit triggers, anything that sends single-player specific commands, like a mission failed command, cinematic sequences, and even cameras and story objects. Game scripts that target the player can be quite funky because they always target every single player in the server. Of course, some of these things are benign or only a nuisance, and they're not really a problem. However, there are other single-player things that should be avoided because they can either kick every player off of the server or crash the server or crash all of the players. These problematic single-player elements include exit level switches or exit triggers, which will boot every single player off the server and send them into a single-player campaign mission. Also included are Marine and Predator NPCs, who, when they are killed by their own species, will boot every player off the server and display the mission failed screen. I'm only naming a few of many single-player elements that may cause problems in a multiplayer map. Be mindful and tread carefully with these things and de-edit and test them. Number 6. Crashing either the server or players. This mistake will kill the chances of getting your map played. There can't be a multiplayer match if the map crashes all the time. So whether it's unintentional or intentional, don't let your map crash players or the server. If your map is causing crashes, figure out what the issue is and fix it. Number 5. Really laggy maps. A map can lag for a lot of reasons. Solving it can range from easily fixed in a minute to days of effort. When testing your map, make sure that you're getting consistent frame rates. I would say somewhere between 50 FPS to 60 FPS or more. Do keep in mind, though, that modern machines should be running AVP2 at least at a consistent 60 frames per second. When frames start dipping to 50 frames per second on a modern machine, this could indicate a problem in your map. Multiplayer maps need to perform well, or the map will play really laggy for most players. If the map lags all the time, players won't play it. If you're having this problem with your map, you'll need to troubleshoot first. Determine whether the problem is only occurring with your map. If you're noticing frame dips only on your map, you'll need to figure out what the cause of the frame dips are. Most of the time, the problem is that there is too much of something on the screen being drawn and rendered at once. This could range from being a large amount of NPCs or an enormous amount of polys being drawn. The point is there's too much of something that is slowing down the engine, and you will need to figure out what that something is and how to fix it. In most cases, it's a sign of a poorly optimized visibility tree or a map leak, where the visibility tree is broken and you're standing in a part of your map that the engine thinks you should be able to see some rooms or areas that you shouldn't actually be able to see from where you're standing. In other words, those rooms or areas are being drawn by the engine even though you can't actually see them. It is also possible that you've simply pushed the engine to its very limit with a cathedral that's made up of 400 million polys. This problem happens to every mapper, novices and experts. Number 4. Broken interactive things. By interactive things, I mean things like doors, switches, triggers, or scripted things. The problem is these things need to work. They cannot get into a broken state, especially a broken state that interrupts the flow of the multiplayer match. For example, if you've added a door that is supposed to open after some event occurs, make sure that door works. If that special door is used in a game mode like evac or overrun, make sure that door opens when it should, especially after multiple rounds. Check that your scripted events are completely working and that players do not get stuck. Getting stuck will not only frustrate the players, it may break your map. Typically these things are mistakes like a broken script for a door where the script will lock the door, but then there's nothing else in the map that will unlock that door. If you've made a sophisticated scripted trap that should kill the player, make sure that it actually kills the player every time and that there's no way that the player gets stuck there. So remember to test the interactive stuff that you've added to your level. Number 3, overriding original game files. So this problem is when a map comes with its own skins, textures, sound packs, models, or soundtracks. In other words, the map is coming with files that override AVP2's base game files as if it were a patch, except instead of fixing a problem, it usually causes one. When a base texture is replaced with another, it may look good in the map that it came with, but this will probably look off and really weird in the rest of the game. As you can see, this gets pretty annoying. Multiplayer players probably do not want to use your skins or soundtrack when they play. In fact, they probably have their own preferred skins that they like to use. When world textures are replaced, this often tends to look like crap on the many other maps that are also using these same exact textures. When maps are compiled into multiplayer map packs, these patched files are always thrown out. This is because they create problematic conflicts for other maps, and multiplayer map packs aren't intended to act as some kind of skin pack or sound pack or any other kind of client-side mod. They're just supposed to be map packs. that make it easier for all of the other players to get the same maps. So do not override any base game files with your multiplayer map. Number 2, forgetting to publish sounds, textures, models, or other files needed by the map. Unfortunately, this happens too often to both novice and expert mappers. When you add new textures, sounds, models, sprites, or other custom stuff, keep track of these new files. When it's time to publish your map, you need to include these files. After a couple weeks of working on a map, it's too easy to forget about those neat ambient noises or Easter eggs that you added when it comes time to publish the map. Sounds can be the most easily missed, since either a tester or players playing your published map will enter that area and hear complete silence. They won't think anything of it. They wouldn't even be capable of realizing that you forgot the new ambient track. Missing textures will appear in a very bright, flat color, so they can be pretty obvious to spot by a tester, unless the texture appears in a hard-to-see spot or a secret Easter egg room that the tester doesn't know about. Number 1, not testing the map. As with any issue in a map, and including every mistake on this list, testing your maps will bring these issues to your attention so that you can fix them. So test your map, as there may be a game-breaking issue that makes your map unplayable or unbalanced. Get a feel for how other players play your map. It may be completely different than what you were thinking while designing it. Evac maps have been released that do not have an evac zone or contain broken scripts that prevent players from reaching the evac zone. Some maps have been released that only have one working spawn point for certain species, and maps were released with missing textures. The map's creators may not have known about these issues when they released them, but some more testing would have caught these problems. So don't forget to test.